Good
Sorry.
morning, everybody. This is a intro that I can actually use going a lot longer because it really gets going. Well, everybody, welcome to everybody this morning. American Scousers coffee right here, or tea right there with American Scouser, where we kind of take a look at using our websites with the latest news updates, kind of take a look at some news and give us our takes. Mecca, how are we doing this morning?
Not too bad. There's no roadworks outside today, so that's good.
Yeah, and no work is good news over there. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So let's start with. I kind of wanted to start with this. It's kind of like risky territory, perhaps, but let's talk about this a little bit. So the Premier League players are going to limit taking a knee. Um, it sounds like it's going to be only on like important games, saving it for special occasions, if you will. What do you make out of that?
Well, I think it makes sense at this point, especially more for English soccer, English sports in general, because when Copernic took the knee, it made sense in for America because you play the national anthem over here before the big games. So taking everybody stands for the national anthem, so taking the knee makes sense as a symbolic gesture. That doesn't happen in England. Um, and I think as good as it was to get that solidarity at this point, it's not really achieving much because the racism. I think the racist incidences have gone up from the crowd towards players, which is shocking for England. But I think holding it for special occasions is probably the right thing to do at this point in time.
Yeah, I'm a little torn only because I mean, I did like the solidarity and stuff, but I feel like part of me says it has become just something that we do. It doesn't have the initial impact or the message that it was meant to get across being reminded. It's more like, I don't think anybody even took it as, oh, they're taking a knee. In the stadium, I think it's a different experience, perhaps, but definitely not like, as we're watching it. But at the same time, my fear is first we do it in special occasions, then we don't do it at all, and then it kind of goes away. Is I guess what I'm more worried about than anything else. But was it serving a purpose? I think it was Zaha who was actually last year talking kind of against it, saying it's kind of like become watered down. So I get that aspect of it for sure, but yeah, a little torn. I wish they did something else instead, as opposed to just making it like an occasional thing. I don't know what that would be. It's not like I have an idea to implement, so maybe it's just basic bitching because I don't have a solution for it. But I'm just more worried, I guess, that it would just kind of like go away and everybody would forget about it. I guess is my worry.
I think though at the same time it's just it's a different culture over there, even in terms of race relations. So it probably didn't have as much bite as it like Colin Kaepernick is still suffering for that right now, needlessly, I would say. But it didn't have the same bite over there, and it was really targeted initially towards the specific incident in the news. Um, but the crowd in general, I don't think you get at the higher level clubs as many racial incidents as you might get lower down the leagues. So it might be a thing that the feedback in the Premier League itself is probably a little bit more or a lot different rather than if you're at Wealdstone FC or something like that, where a lot of those national front types tended to congregate in those lower levels way back in the 80s when it was really nasty.
Yeah, I think it is kind of hard for us to exactly understand. That's why it's good to have you on as well to give that side's perspective because it's kind of harder to gauge. I mean, I was there, I lived there a long time ago, like during college years. So, and it was kind of different. Maybe I think that's like was you're kind of like learning on the go kind of deal. So it's probably not as I don't know if it's as bad as here. I like I say, it's one of those things that I liked seeing initially, and I realize it's gotten kind of watered down. I just hope that people are still working on getting the message across instead of just forgetting about it first once a special occasion, then never again kind of deal.
Yeah, and I think you would have to hope that the efforts will still continue even if they take a different form.
Yeah.
And then something that's at least consistently impactful rather than something that could be thrown back at you as a sort of a fad, so to speak. So, maybe coming up with something different might be the better option.
Next up, we're still staying in this Premier League. So yesterday, initially, the rumors were we will get to hear the VAR audio between what's going on basically behind the major decisions. And obviously there was like a lot of like question marks even within that. I think we all said about goddamn time, but then it was major decisions, and then it was possibly, and this is off of ESPN right now that the sources are they're not going to release it yet. They're like, you know what? I don't know if that's such a good idea. I just feel like, why the hell not? And by saying, I don't know if everybody needs to hear this, aren't you almost looking like you're freaking hiding something?
No, that's exactly it. It's especially in the Premier League where the celebrity of refs that has kind of happened in the last few years. With say like Mark Clattenburg and stuff like that being on television, being like a pundit, for example, and releasing their own books and kind of getting a little inkling as to their thinking when they were referees, and hearing things like the crowd got to me a little bit, so I made this decision rather than the right decision, or I just didn't want to hear this player whinging to me, so I made this call rather than that call. There's probably an element of, well, if we release the genie, you can't put it back in the bottle after that. So we're going to have to do our jobs. So I think there could be an element of that to it. But I also read today that they might release the recordings after the games and not during them. I think they should go full tilt like rugby. They should go straight for miking up the referees. Let us hear what decisions they're making. Probably have to put it on a delay, especially over here, because of the amount of swear words that players use during the calls. But I think it would, number one, it would help.
Wait, now that you said that,
understand the rules.
Isn't the rugby on delay as well? I can't see rugby players like speaking proper English either. So
well, I mean, from my perspective, growing up, like it was always the upper middle class sport, so they kind of had a different code of ethics, so to speak. Where soccer was the sport of the gutter, so you got a lot more industrial language. But you would have to put it on delay anyway, just so there's no controversial statements being made. But I think I encounter a lot of even long-time soccer fans and even supporters who played the game who don't understand the nuances of some of the laws of the game, like what's offside, what's not offside, what's handball, what's not handball. And I think it would be helpful to hear the referee explanations. If you're thinking like even big picture, to hear the explanations of why these calls are made so that people would understand the laws better. So that maybe when they're going to their kids' game at the weekend, instead of shouting at the 15-year-old referee for a call that they don't fully understand, they might actually, let them do their job for the $75 per hour they're probably getting or something.
Yeah, you would wish, but yeah, I've heard some stuff being yelled from the sidelines as well. Both my girls like played soccer, and yeah, it's like horrendous. And it's like, dude, if you don't know, just shut the hell up. Like, you don't see me go into a baseball game and just like argue in the strike zone and stuff like that, because I wouldn't know any better. At least I would give it some time. Obviously, your kid is only 4, just starting this out. You do not know soccer at all. It's very clear. Just stop arguing calls, because what you're saying is not even making sense. But yeah, I hear you. And I think, I wish it was like rugby, because we could understand it. I know like in NBA, they do this thing where they kind of come back to the table and explain at least what they did to the camera, to the broadcast, which I'm okay with as well. I mean, that's all I want is an explanation, because there are times where we're looking at the VAR, footage over and over again. Same crap they're looking. In fact, supposedly they're seeing even more than we are. And we're like, there's no way. Like, there's no way this is getting overturned, or there's no way that's not a handball. And then the call is made, and you're like, what the hell? How the hell is that even possible? It would be nice if they said, well, Tim, it's possible because I saw this, or this is what happened, or something like that. By keeping it secret and not, releasing those voice records. And I don't even care if it's after the game, because obviously what's done is done, whether we find out 10 seconds later or 10 hours later. What's done is done. They're not going to change that decision because I'm going to be home saying, I'm not going to be able to counter what they said. So it is what it is. But it would be nice to know one way or another in terms of why they made that call right there, right then. Like you're saying, I don't know if we'll help us understand the game better. At least it will make us understand, what the hell they were thinking. Because there are times where, like, you just sit there puzzled. You're like, how the hell is that even possible? Like, what are they looking at?
I also think, though, like a possible cynical angle to it would be that maybe they don't want the managers and the coaches hearing what they're saying and finding out which referees can be swayed one way or the other by by manager pressure, in the way that, say, Alex Ferguson did in the 80s and 90s for United. So, I mean, there could be an element of they want to not add more pressure to the referees as it is, but I don't see any reason why they just shouldn't at least release, for major decisions, at least here's what the referees were saying and what they were thinking. And if they're not going to do that, at least maybe think about bringing the referees out for interviews after the games and then explaining to the reporters,
just
give us a
stand by your
better
decision.
understanding.
You're making a decision, just stand by it, right or wrong. I mean, sometimes when it's wrong, they come back afterwards and like, oh, our bad, we apologize. What's done is done, nothing changes. But at least it's, even in those instances where we say, well, too late now, we lost the points or whatever it may be, at least it's good to either, one, acknowledge your mistake, or two, tell us if you don't think it's a mistake, why the hell not? But Alan Walnut is with us. Good morning, Alan. You can see the early risers over here, especially if they're like West Coast or Central Zone time, like I am here. I'll tell you who is very happy that we're doing this every morning. The rest of the family, and I do that in the most sarcastic possible way. Tell you what, Layla's happy because she's gonna have a partner wake up early with her when school starts. But until school starts, I don't think she's a happy camper. You know who's also not a happy camper is Eric Ten Hag, because people are bailing at halftime. When the teacher leaves, everybody leaves the class early. So we talked about this, I think it was Monday, when we were looking at the headlines about Ronaldo leaving. And this is, I also read something, by the way, I didn't see the headline this morning, but Ronaldo and Maguire are like the most harassed players on social media or something like that. I don't know.
Quite rightly.
Quite, especially. I don't know what the parameters for those are, but so I guess this is one of those cases where, everybody jumped on Ronaldo's throat, whereas it looks like now several players left, including Cristiano Ronaldo. So what do you make of this? I mean, I guess it could be one of those where, you see Ronaldo leaving, you're like, like I would like to know more about this in terms of which players, because I mean, if it's like the youth players, which I'm assuming not, because they're probably on the field now.
I believe Dalot was one of them.
So it's like, you're like, Ronaldo's leaving, why the hell not, kind of a deal. But it also shows that Ronaldo is not your ideal role model for that team when the guy is saying, I want to go. So the story only got worse, not for Ronaldo, I think, but for United as a whole, as a team, and obviously Eric Ten Hag.
Well, I think he's been brought in as the stern taskmaster with the discipline and all the fines and the 27 rules and et cetera, et cetera. But it almost looks like he's going to have the same problem that the previous manager and the previous manager before that and the previous manager before that had, which is player power. And once you have that, and unless you change it, you're on a hide into nothing. So I think that they have to seriously back him in getting rid of all those players, which means probably starting again almost for United and going back a few steps, or hope, as they have been for the last few years, that it all work itself out, which it won't, which would be great entertainment for the rest of us, but not so much for the United fans.
So I guess that's like the dangerous territory now. And I think in most cases, unless you have a guy as a manager who can kind of say, I am what I am, and they have kind of proven themselves, and the players know it's his way or the highway, that's very hard not to give the power to the players. And that's why I think taking a chance on younger managers is becoming more and more risky now, because of the wages and stuff like that. And obviously, the cliche is, it's a lot easier to change the manager than the entire team. But, unless you have a guy like Klopp, Pep, I don't know, like Conte or somebody like that, where they are the boss, regardless of who's getting paid what. It's very risky to put a young guy, regardless of how promising they are, because when something like this happens, this is what's gonna end up happening. I don't know if Ten Hag is going to be able to keep fighting the fights, how long it will last. I mean, it makes good entertainment for us Liverpool fans, but it's at the same time, it's kind of like a grand scheme of things. It's very hard for a young manager to establish themselves unless they have early success.
I think like when those managers come in, they have to come in with something that the players can latch on to. So in the case of like Conte or Guardiola, even before anything they won as coaches in terms of trophies, they were top level players. Like Pep Guardiola was one of
Yeah.
the best defensive midfielders in Europe in the time that he played. Conte was an Italian legend. He was a superstar. Klopp wasn't, but he did such a great job with Dortmund and brought them to places that they probably didn't think they could get to. That he had, if he'd have gone to United, I don't think he'd have been half as successful as he is with us. He had to come
True.
to a club like Liverpool or Spurs that were just ready to get to the next level. I think that's probably what hurt Brendan Rodgers at Liverpool more than anything else. He had the reputation of the talented young coach, but he had nothing to back him up, either player-wise or even coaching-wise, as good as he might have been on the field. Bringing Swansea into the Premier League is not that great of an achievement when you have Champions League winning players on the roster. So I think for Ten Hag, he did a good job with Ajax, but it's a 2-3 team league. It's not really, There's not going to be any shocks there. So you can't come in swinging the lead, so to speak, when you have a multiple Champions League winning player as your star player, who ridiculed Rafa Benitez at Real Madrid because Rafa Benitez was trying to show him how to kick a ball, which was a silly move to do, really. But you can't come into those players and start laying down the law unless you have something to back you up behind you, which would usually involve having a playing career, or at the very least, like Mourinho, who could come in and do those things because he's taken teams to the heights of their success.
Yes. You have to have like some kind of a track record showing, so that the player has to be able to say, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I think it has to be kind of like a respectable track record. And I don't know if like Ten Hag's success in Ajax is that. I guess we'll find out. He seems like a nice dude, but it's just like, I think, like you're saying, is he's having the same issues that managers before him had. And yeah, it's definitely fun to watch. I have a good old time with my brother, who's a United fan, all the time. And he always feels like, just got to get some of these old people out of the boards, like Ferguson and stuff like that, and say, hey man, thanks for everything, but
they did the opposite. They brought him in,
messing everything up. Yeah, you just like messing everything up now. So kind of a deal. And I think it was probably not a great move. I mean, we talked about this on Monday. The whole Ronaldo thing was a disaster move to start with, but it doesn't help a guy like Ten Hag to walk into a situation where you have a character like Ronaldo, and you either have to win him early, which obviously clearly is not the case. So yeah, it should be fun to watch.
It'll be, if it goes the way it could go, and by that I mean very badly for United, it'll be the best sitcom that Peacock have had in years.
I mean, last year was pretty darn close, and just when you thought that season couldn't be beat, we might.
Yeah, now they're getting into syndication territory now.
So let's talk about this. It's probably like the last headline, and I know you had some like signings that you want to recap as well. So Napoli owner, who does definitely look like an Italian owner in that photo, like just like missing the backups and over there, like the guys in the black suits in the background, probably behind that billboard, but says they will not sign, like players from Africa unless they're signing a waiver saying they will not go to AFCON. I mean, I understand and I get it. We've had the same frustration. I think any club who has African players do, but that just does not sound right either. I mean, your guy, I know it's like the beginning either they got to do something better with the timing on AFCON, and I know, obviously climates, heat, and stuff like that are concerns to be able to do it like a World Cup and stuff like that. But either they have to figure that out. It just doesn't feel fair on African players to say, "Well, you're not going to compete in this, then sign here if you want to play." It just sounds shady, and is probably shades don't help the cause overall with that statement. But
I think though if it comes from Italian soccer, you kind of have to maybe look at it that there's a slight tinge of racism involved with that, because there is a problem with racism against African players in the Italian leagues. So there might be a little bit of looking down on AFCON as being a lower tournament. It is a fair thing for a club owner to say, we're going to be paying millions and millions of euros to these players. We expect them to not be dipping out every 2 years for like a month and a half when we need them at the most important time of the year. But who doesn't want to play for the country?
yeah,
You're not going to get them to make that decision unless they're maybe on the fringes of their national teams. I think it's going to militate against them, but again, if we're cynical about it, maybe that's what he's planning for. So
I think that's why it sounds really off. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's the dude himself, the fact that it's coming from Italy. And I can see, I don't know, maybe something should not be said. Like if you're gonna scout accordingly, I get that. I understand why, club owners and managers are concerned about it. But maybe if he said something like, it's definitely gonna like lower their value, like their transfer market value or something like that, I can understand that, because like you're saying, you're spending millions.
If you'd have said something like, we're not going to pay premium prices for players we're going to miss every 2 years, that might be one thing. But I'm just thinking back to a few years ago, maybe it was about 6 years ago, Arrigo Sacchi made like comments in the press that he got in trouble for, that there was too many young African players in the Italian national youth teams, and they need to do something about it. And it was something along those lines, and he got raked over the coals for that. And you kind of like, I think there's maybe a hint of that about in this. It's more almost a comment about what's happening in the makeup of Italian football teams than it is about the AFCON itself.
And that's the thing. If it was worded where, like we were talking about yesterday when we were talking about Nat Phillips, where he has like the English tax. So a guy who's worth maybe 50 million should probably go for 25 million because of, like the homegrown and all that kind of stuff. But you could say kind of like the reverse over there and say, hey, we're not going to spend 50. So our evaluation is going to go low because we're going to know that we're going to miss these guys for 2 months or whatever the case might be. I could understand that and probably have a lot more respect for that. But when you say we're going to have him sign a waiver and stuff, anytime somebody makes you sign a waiver, there's something shady going on anyway. Like, why am I signing this? So, when he presents it like that, I think it's hard not to be cynical, like you're saying, and like kind of like try more to read between the lines. Whereas, like I say, if you just came out and said, hey, we're not going to spend 50, we're only going to evaluate it at like 35. Okay, that's fair.
I would have been slightly more in tune with it if he was the owner of Barcelona or Madrid or Bayern Munich, but it's Napoli.
Yeah. I think the source definitely.
I don't think there's going to be a line of African players looking to go to Napoli and go, yeah, give me the waiver right now. I'll sign it on the dotted line quickly. I think he has a reputation for making outlandish statements as well in any case. So it could be just that thing as well.
And it's definitely worked like a charm. I know you had some like signings that you wanted to recap, so we can kind of do quick takes on those.
The one that I thought was funny was Telles is going to Sevilla from United. Alex Telles, I think it is.
Yes,
I just thought Telles Sevilla. I just kept thinking Kojak. So I think that'd be the typical Man United kind of a sign of it, sale rather. But the one I was interested in was what's his name, Gueye to Everton from PSG, which I thought was great because he was at Aston Villa when they got relegated. So I just have it in my head that Lampard was like, we want really experienced players to come into the club for a relegation battle. And you're like, oh, okay, well, let's sign the one who took the last club he was at down.
Yeah, I saw that earlier too, and I'm like, that is like an odd move. He was there at one point as well, right? He was
I think he was
for like 2-3 seasons, and obviously, didn't.
I mean, he did well there. Like, I think he was a player of the season or something like that for them.
Well, obviously, other word, like he got attention to go to League One and have PSG spent money, but PSG has money to burn. I was also reading Gini might be heading to play in Roma, where all old Premier League players go. It feels like Roma is the destination. And
Mourinho. You're probably correct, but I think he's a Mourinho type player. Like, I think Mourinho outside of Klopp will probably get the most out of him. But I just, every time I think of Gini Wijnaldum, I just think, great player, but trail of regret from now on to the end of his career. He'll wear it like a cloak.
Yeah, right. I mean, I guess he got what he wanted in terms of like the money and the bottom line. You can't fault a guy if he wants to kind of like cash in, but be careful what you wish for. I mean, that kind of like, paying
the Champions League
for that price. What was that?
He didn't get a Champions League.
Did he? No, he won it with us.
Oh, he was there. Well, yeah.
And that's the thing. I think, once you win, but was he there in the title winning year?
That's what I'm going to be confusing it with.
Because I thought he was, because I thought it was a situation where he had won everything. I mean, that was like the thing with Sadio for me too. I can kind of understand, you won everything at a location. I mean, yeah, obviously, heck, it was us. We would play there till like 90. We'd be like the next Milner. But I can understand you're like, you know what, let me bank on this contract at the same time. Now I can focus on money because it's my last 2-3 seasons I'm going to play. Not that, they're probably, of course, everybody, like when you compare it to like what you and I make, you're like, you already made a ton of money. Yeah, but in the grand scheme of things, I mean, he's basically forced into early retirement, if you will, as a soccer player. So I can understand why they would want to bank on that last contract that you have once you're over 30. I don't hold anything against them, especially once they have like won everything. So that's like the biggest thing. The Telles thing is weird for me because I honestly did not understand why they signed Telles in the first place at United. I had watched him playing for Galatasaray, and while he kind of reminds me a little bit of Moreno-ish when we had Mourinho, where, good going forward, but just horrific defensively and, positioning wise. So I never thought he was ready or he was good enough for the Premier League. And I guess he was not.
It's probably like a paradox thing, like, because United already had a fullback on the opposite side who was great going forward and horrible going back in what's his name, Wan-Bissaka.
Wan-Bissaka, yeah,
Wan-Bissaka. So maybe that's what it is. You just can't have too many of them. But
just get some symmetry going.
but going back to like if he's leaving United, they're selling the wrong players. They need to be selling the ones that are causing the trouble and keeping the players, even if they're not great, that are at least honest.
I think they have some. That's the thing. I mean, it's a hot mess and it's great to watch, but I think they have some players that are like certain clicks are a bit too powerful. And I know they signed the young kids from the Dutch league. I think from Ajax actually, or maybe Feyenoord. I mean, I know he's coming from the Dutch league as a left back. Starts with them. I can't remember the kid's name now. And then obviously they have Shaw over there, who's
he leaves at halftime anyway because that's when the French fries are nearly sold out, so he needs to get there quick.
Him and Ronaldo leaving early to get the fresh ones. I can see.
He's the only professional soccer player that makes me think I could still play just based on shape.
Right? You're like, hey man, I'm only 5 pounds away.
he completely took that whole like, Luke, come on, we're gonna be in at 10 a.m. tomorrow. We're gonna do team shape, and he was like, yes, round, thank you. Finally,
sign me up. Finally. Well, Marca, and another great morning over here. We'll call it a day, and then we'll be back again bright and early tomorrow. Let's see who left for Ronaldo, and we'll talk about that. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.